Alongside the seminal high fantasy series Game of Thrones, HBO's satirical comedy drama Succession is one of the most popular and highly regarded TV shows of the past 15 years. At their best, both series garnered universal acclaim and reshaped the entire landscape of television. But there's one key difference between them, which places Succession a cut above its neo-medieval contemporary. Both shows started strongly, with Game of Thrones actually receiving more praise for its debut season than Succession did. However, Succession's seasons continued to get stronger as the show went on, culminating in a breathtaking final season in 2023. Unfortunately, with Game of Thrones, it was a different story. The fantasy show simply couldn't live up to its own incredibly high standards by its 8th and final season. Game of Thrones' ending was a huge disappointment to fans and critics alike, tarnishing the legacy of the series and giving a deeply unsatisfactory send-off to some of the most beloved characters in recent television history. Succession stuck the landing better than Game of Thrones. Its finale was stunningly effective as opposed to God's weak ending. In contrast to Game of Thrones, Succession's series finale was its finest hour, springing an ingeniously crafted surprise which had subtly been prepared throughout the show's run, right under our noses. No one could have been less appropriate for the role of Waystar Royco CEO than Logan Roy's ostracized son-in-law Tom Wambsgans, and yet, in truth, Tom was the perfect choice. He somehow managed to be an impossibly spineless doormat and a hideously unscrupulous social climber at the same time. As such, he climbed his way to the top of Logan Roy's company without anyone noticing, where he could serve as the ideal pain sponge for Waystar Royco's new owners. Tom's journey was the embodiment of everything that was wrong with the company, which, in the end, made him just the right fit. What's more, while he'd taken on all the Roy family's worst qualities to further his own career, he didn't have the baggage that came with appointing an actual Roy as Logan's successor. In a deliciously ironic turn of events, Succession's finale proved that pure nepotism doesn't always pay. By contrast, the Game of Thrones finale felt mostly redundant, going through the motions to tie up loose ends without ever broaching the kind of climactic twist that made Succession's final bow so stunningly effective. A lot had already gone wrong with Game of Thrones Season 8 more generally before its last episode, but the show's final 78 minutes of television were still a letdown for viewers who'd been watching it for 8 years. The major events that it depicted felt rushed and underdeveloped, and therefore lacked any semblance of a well-earned payoff. What Succession's finale got right that Game of Thrones didn't? The episode was meticulously crafted with the rest of the series in mind. Although Game of Thrones' final seasons weren't all bad, they lacked the clarity of thought and feel for characters that went into George R.R. Martin's novel series, on which the first 6 seasons are directly based. The TV show's writers clearly struggled to develop the likes of Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen further without Martin's novels to guide them. Meanwhile, Succession's last season was meticulously plotted, carefully developing plot threads and character arcs that had begun in previous episodes and seasons, under the direct supervision of creator and showrunner Jesse Armstrong. Having already written series finales for The Thick of It and Peep Show, Armstrong was a seasoned pro when it came to finishing with the strongest episode possible. Succession's finale isn't just a superb piece of television on its own terms, or a fitting ending for the show's characters. It feels like it belongs at the end of the story, alongside the other episodes not only of its season, but of the entire series. Perhaps the best example of the episode's suitability as an ending is the way it circles back to the Lawrence Yee storyline from Succession's very first episode. Yee unexpectedly made good on his threat to become a bigger fish in the business world, and eat the Roy family up. Succession will go down in history as one of the best TV shows of all time. Game of Thrones was a landmark series, but not on the same level. Retrospectively, Game of Thrones will go down in history as a generationally brilliant, game-changing fantasy drama, which opened the door for other major shows in the genre to follow in its wake. However, Succession will go down as one of the greatest satires of a true story ever made, and as a TV show for the ages, across all genres. Its cutting one-liners, cringingly awful character flaws, and agonizingly brilliant dramatic ironies set it apart among the best shows of the century. Succession is so good that you have to watch it a second time to catch most of the jokes, as well as the nuances of each character's behavior. Rarely has a comedy show been so dark and brutal, or landed so on the money with its portrayal of a real-world setting. Succession may have lasted just 4 seasons and 39 episodes, but it's already left an indelible mark across the whole of television.